Okay, let's unpack this one. Imagine a hair loss compound, right? Showed immense scientific promise, then just poof, seemed to vanish from the medical world. We're taking a deep dive into RU58841, a substance that's, well, it's fueled both a lot of hope and, frankly, significant controversy in the hair loss community. This thing was developed decades ago. And the idea seemed brilliant, a potent topically applied anti-androgen. But what was it about that specific approach targeting androgenetic alopecia, AGA, that seemed so promising? Especially avoiding the systemic side effects you get with pills like Finasteride.
Yeah, what's fascinating is exactly that that targeted idea, the initial preclinical stuff. Back in the 90s, it looked exceptionally good because it aimed right at the follicle. But despite that early buzz, the formal clinical development, early 2000s, it just got dropped, abruptly abandoned by the pharma sponsors, and the results from the human trials never saw the light of day, never published. So our mission today really is to try and navigate this information gap, separate the actual science from the speculation, and importantly, clarify the pretty profound risks people are taking with its current unregulated use.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. So let's get into that initial promise. What exactly made RU58841 seem like such a potential breakthrough, scientifically speaking? Like, how does it work?
Okay, so basically, RU58841 is what's called a non-steroidal anti-androgen, an NSAA, and it works by directly competing with dihydrotestosterone DHT for those androgen receptors in your hair follicles. But unlike DHT, RU58841 doesn't actually activate the receptor. Think of it like a key that fits in the lock but won't turn it. So it effectively blocks that hormonal signal, the one that leads to miniaturization, that shrinking of the follicle. And the whole design was for it to work just locally, right there on the scalp, without affecting your systemic hormone levels body-wide.
Right, and there was actual evidence for this local action early on. Pretty strong evidence.
Absolutely. The preclinical data was honestly compelling. They used stump-tailed macaques, that's kind of the gold standard animal model for male pattern baldness for AGA, and a 5% topical solution of RU58841. It led to a 103% average increase in anagen phase follicles. That's the active growth phase, which, numerically at least, was better than the 88% increase they saw with oral finasteride in the same study. And crucially, in those primate studies, they found 0 systemic side effects. No changes in circulating hormones. That was big.
And they didn't stop there, did they? Weren't there studies with human scalp grafts, too?
Yes, exactly. They took human scalp grafts, put them onto nude mice standard technique, and treated them for 6 months. What they found was RU58841 caused about 28% of the active follicles to recycle into a new growth phase. Compare that to only 7% in the placebo group. So yeah, that kind of data definitely pushed things towards human trial.
Okay, so human trials did happen then.
They did. A pharma company, Prostruckin, they bought the rights. They initiated phase 9 and phase 2 clinical trials. They called it PSK 3841, but it was RU58841. But then right after those trials, development just stopped. Dead halt. The drug was completely removed from their pipeline, and like you said, 0 data published from those human studies. Now, in drug development, pulling a drug after investing in phase 2, that almost always points to a fatal flaw.
Right.
Could be an unacceptable safety issue, or maybe it just didn't work well enough in actual humans.
Right, a fatal flaw. And it's exactly that gap, that unexplained stop where things get messy now, isn't it? Because RU58841 is back, but sold online as a research chemical, which basically forces users into this weird world of DIY pharmacology. You're buying raw powder, mixing it yourself.
Yeah, it creates just a whole host of risks you can't even quantify. First off, purity. There's absolutely no guarantee what you're buying is pure RU58841. You could be exposing yourself to toxic leftover chemicals from a bad synthesis or unknown byproducts. Then there's dosing. It's incredibly inaccurate without proper lab gear. You're just guessing, really. And, this is critical, the compound itself isn't very stable in those homemade solutions people mix up. It degrades, potentially pretty quickly, and who knows what it breaks down into. Could be inactive, could be something harmful.
And despite the theory being local action, we hear a lot of anecdotal reports, right? People using it report systemic side effects. Things like decreased libido, ED, heart palpitations, fatigue, insomnia. Sounds familiar.
Very familiar. They sound remarkably similar to the known side effects of systemic anti-androgens, like finasteride, which obviously raises a huge question. Could significant amounts be getting absorbed systemically, despite being applied topically?
Is that even plausible? For a topical to cause systemic issues like that?
Well, here's the thing. Topical doesn't always mean purely local. And we have real-world proof now. Just recently, April 2024, the U.S. FDA put out a formal warning. It was based on numerous reports of side effects from users of compounded topical finasteride, prescription topical finasteride. We're talking depression, dizziness, decreased libido, the same kind of systemic issues. So that definitively shows, yes, significant systemic absorption of a potent hormonal drug can happen through the scalp, which makes those anecdotal reports about RU58841 entirely plausible, unfortunately.
Okay, so when you stack RU58841 up against the approved stuff, like finasteride, Minoxidil, it's a very different picture. With the approved drugs, we have large-scale human trials, documented efficacy, known side effect profiles, regulated manufacturing.
Exactly. It's a stark contrast. With RU58841, the risks are basically unquantified. We have no idea about long-term effects. And the quality control on the product itself, it's non-existent. It's completely unassured.
So that compelling early promise.
Yeah, that compelling preclinical promise, it's totally overshadowed by the unexplained clinical abandonment and by the really serious unknown risks people take using it in this unregulated way.
It's just a powerful reminder, isn't it? Even the most exciting scientific idea has to pass the ultimate test, human trials. And without that published human data, using this compound feels like a massive gamble. You're basically betting against what were likely unfavorable trial results that the company never disclosed.
Which leaves us, and leaves you, the listener, with a really important question to think about. In a world overflowing with information, and sometimes misinformation, how do we critically evaluate the appeal, the allure of these research chemicals? Especially when you weigh it against the deafening scientific silence surrounding their actual safety and effectiveness in humans.